In this video, I'm going to show how to replace the front brakes, pads, and rotors on this Toyota Corolla. Let's get started. With a 21mm socket, remove all 5 lug nuts and then remove the wheel. If your vehicle has locking lug nuts, break them free first with a breaker bar with the wheel on the ground. Otherwise, the splines on that locking lug nut socket could get damaged and break off. I've already loosened mine up, so let's remove the rest of them. Not all vehicles have these locking lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Now with an 8mm socket, let's break free the bleeder screw. If there's a cover on it, a little rubber boot, take it off. Mine is missing. We'll leave this open. It's dripping into a drain pan. And I have this collection receptacle that has a rubber hose attached to it. I'm going to hook that on there so that any brake fluid that comes out will actually go into my collection receptacle as opposed to all over the ground. Even though I have a drain pan there, this will be a lot cleaner. Next, I want to put a little pry bar in here and pry the caliper in and the pad towards the piston of the caliper. That'll compress the piston. And I opened the bleeder screw for that reason, so that we don't push any brake fluid back through the system, but rather flush it out. All right. That pad has completely pushed the piston in. This tells us 2 things. One, the piston goes in nice and smooth. It's not damaged or seized. The slider pins moved, so those aren't damaged or seized. And the pads are not stuck. So, well, that's nice to know for when we go to take them out, because sometimes they get really stuck in here. Close off that bleeder screw. If you had a hose attached, remove it, and we'll spray this down with some brake parts cleaner to get rid of any brake fluid that dripped down. Once this has dried up, if you had your rubber boot or plug for the bleeder screw, you'd put it right back on. Using a 14mm wrench or socket, remove the 2 bolts holding this caliper onto the bracket. Take this off. Inspect it really quick. Make sure that there's no fluid coming out of here, and double check that that piston did press in all the way, which it did. Everything's clean, ready to go. So we're going to hang this on the strut so it doesn't pull on the brake hose. Remove the brake pads. And with a 17mm socket, remove the 2 bolts holding the caliper bracket onto the knuckle. Take this off and set it aside. Now remove your rotor. If it's seized onto the hub, use a hammer and the vibrations should break it free. Now we have to clean the surface of this hub up. It's not too bad, but a wire brush is needed to get all of this nice and flat, nice and clean. And then of course we'll coat it with anti-seize so that rust doesn't build up in the future. And it's important to do this so that it doesn't rust and push the rotor out over time, which will cause braking issues. Also, if there is already debris and rust on here, it won't even sit flat to begin with, again, causing braking issues. And you don't want to put too much anti-seize when you coat it. Otherwise, it could actually fling out, get everywhere, and you don't want this on your brakes. Now install the rotor, and I'm putting it backwards for now just so I can rinse this area off with brake parts cleaner. Most of the time they have oils on the rotors just so that it doesn't rust while it's being stored, but you don't want that on your brake pads. So with the drain pan underneath, rinse it off. Once it has dried, take it, flip it around, install it the right way, and rinse off this area. Using an axle nut as a spacer and a lug nut, I'm going to put this on by hand just so the rotor can stay steady and stop falling as I work. That'll help out in the long run. With our caliper on the workbench, let's remove the old anti-rattle clips. Sometimes you need a pocket screwdriver to help you out. They get stuck on here. And once you get these off, you want to clean underneath them. You want to get all of that rust and debris off of there. Usually a wire brush will do the trick, but if you need to use a file, go ahead, just don't remove too much material, otherwise the pads will have too much play. You just want to remove the rust, so then we can coat it with an anti-corrosive coating so it doesn't rust in the future. Once you got all that cleaned up, rinse it with some brake parts cleaner. With this cleaned up and dried, put a little bit of silicone paste that is rated for brakes on this area. If you don't have that, you could use some brake grease, but whatever you do, you want to put high temperature grease on here so that it doesn't melt as the brakes operate because they get really hot. And you don't want to put a lot. If you do, it'll squeeze out when you put the anti-rattle clips on and get on the rotor that rides in the middle. So you want to avoid that, just a thin layer to prevent corrosion. When you install these, you want to have the hook of the spring facing out and the spring part towards the base of the caliper bracket, not towards the slider pin area. Slide them over and press them down. This is most likely just a little bit tedious because you have to get them just right in order for them to seat. All right, with these done, we'll do the same to the other side. Now let's remove the slider pins one at a time, peel the boot off. This one's a little bit stuck here. I like to do these one at a time because one of them will just be a straight flat pin. The other one will have a small rubber bushing or sleeve right at the tip. It is important that they go back exactly where they came from. So at this point, because this one has no rust, and looking in here, I see good grease. It's just a little bit dried up. I'm going to remove the boot. And I'm going to clean inside of here with a little bit of brake parts cleaner. A trick is, if you don't have a bore brush, just stick the pin in and just work it back and forth. That'll usually get all the grease out. We'll rinse it out a little bit. To clean inside the boot, which of course you'd want to inspect for any tears and any imperfections, this one's all right. I'm going to put the rag that I'm using right through it and just massage it into the rag. What that's going to do is it's going to allow the rag to absorb all the old grease and it'll leave it nice and clean. Put a little bit of that silicone paste on the inner lip of this caliper, right where the boot goes, so that the boot not only slides in easier, but seals up and does not have any rust buildup in the future. And at this point, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to get these to slide in, just because they want to slide right out until they pop into their groove. There we go. All right, so this one's in. I'm going to take some brake grease, or silicone paste that is for me, and put it inside the boot. This will act as a reserve of grease, and over time will keep the slider pin lubricated. And then I'll put some on the slider pin itself. You can't put too much because it's going to get wiped off anyway. The boot is somewhat of a tight fit. Apply some right to this upper ridge of the slider pin. That's where the boot seals up, and it's important that grease is there so it can seal up properly and prevent any water and moisture from getting in here. And now slide the pin in. A lot of times what happens is there will be air trapped at the bottom here, and if it's not trapped down here, it'll be trapped in the boot. Now what you can do for this is simply keep it pressed down, and eventually, especially if you move it a little bit, the air will come out and escape into the boot. All right, I got the air out. That's perfect. It slides in nice and smooth. Flip this around, do the same to the other slider pin. Take your caliper bracket, slide it over the knuckle, have one bolt ready to line up so that you can start it in and secure this bracket. And of course, once you get that one started, you can let go and start in the lower one. We'll snug them both up. Torque this to 79 foot-pounds. On the top ear of the inner pad, you want to put this little wear indicator that comes in your brake hardware package. All you do is you line up the wear indicator with the cutout on the end of the pad here, and you kind of hook it on, press it down just like that. You want to make sure that the end of that tab is facing where the pad material is, and obviously not backwards. And now you take the pad and you put it into the bracket kind of at an angle. And the bottom. Perfect. Make sure they move around smoothly. We'll put in the outer pad. This does not get a wear indicator on the outside. Perfect. That's nice and free in there. So these are installed. Let's put the caliper over. Slide your caliper over the pads, over the pins. Have the 2 bolts ready to start and to tighten up. Once you get these bottomed out, torque them to 25 foot-pounds. All right, let's get the wheel back on. Hold it on here and install all 5 lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a cross pattern, and also in a cross pattern, we'll torque them to 76 foot-pounds. Double check them all. Pump up the brake pedal. Top off the master cylinder and take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.